That's the cutoff date for anything that's public domain, so we can record it. And this is the old T for Two, and the words were written by Anne Marie Acacia. Divine life, love, and wisdom in expression. My affirmations are words of life, love, and wisdom. They are truths grounded in the presence of God within me. And I affirm, I am divine life in expression. Every cell of my body is awakened. I'm consciously connected to the Spirit of God within, and my body responds with renewed life. I am divine love in expression. I make the sacred connection with others. Love is the glue that binds my relationships and evokes reverence and mutual appreciation. I am divine wisdom in expression. I'm alert and confident wherever I am and whatever I do. Words that spring from the consciousness of God's presence are powerful and effective. They transform and heal, create and renew. And from Ezekiel, I will put my spirit within you. And so it is. Let's take these thoughts into the silence.
Let's pray. Almighty Spirit, you are the essence of the Creator of the universe. We recognize and acknowledge today that you are the one and only power in the universe, and you are only good. You are the only wisdom and intelligence that is available to each and every one of us as we access it. And you are present everywhere. In each and every one of us as we meet today. And as we get silent in this moment, we connect and say yes. Yes to your life, yes to your love, yes to your intelligence, and yes to your power that's available to each and every one. And so it is. Amen. Are you having as much fun as I am in this series? I hope so. Tuesday night's going to be fun because we're going to add a whole nother level to what we're doing. And what's so important to understand in Dr. Katie is the number 7 metaphysically represents physical completion. And so number 7 is no coincidence at what she teaches here. And then the other 5 chapters go on to chapter 12, then is the culmination or summation of the spiritual. And her blocks build that way. And I'm excited about 7 because it takes 1 through 6 and summarizes in a way that we can begin to implement it in our daily life. But very quickly, we'll just review the first 6. As we said, Dr. Emily Cady, you can see when she lived, middle 1800s to almost the middle of 1900, 93 years, I believe. It was pretty old back then. Why? Because she lived the principles she teaches. And you and I can access the very same power and the same energy and the same wisdom and intelligence that she did. And that's what I love about this teaching, because it's transformative if we do the work. I started, as I said, 30 years ago. When I first read it, I could feel my soul just, it's truth. But it's been through the last couple of years of really going back and understanding it at a different level. And we're going to talk about spiritual understanding today, which is available to each and every one of us. As she said, I say this every week, take what you can from it, put everything you know in the back burner for now, listen to it, read it, study it, and at the very end say, if it's not for me, put it aside and go back to what you believe. I love that in a spiritual teacher because there's no ego in it. It's not like my way or the highway kind of stuff. And all of us, when I look back at my 30 years, I picked up pieces along the way, pieces that I wasn't ready for 30 years ago. And that's okay, because that's where you are, and that's what she's saying. It's okay because some of the things are going to sound so familiar, especially if you've been in unity for a long time. But she's taken it to a different level, and we're going to see. So lesson 1, 2, and 3 was the first week. Bondage or freedom, liberty, which do you want for yourself? And we've talked about identify where you're in bondage. What's holding you back? Is it emotional? Is it financial? Is it relationship? Is it physical? Spiritual? And her belief system is exactly as the master teacher was. We have the ability to be free at any level that we want. We get to choose that. And number 2 was statement of being, and there's 3 questions that we work on. 1, what do I believe and see God as? 2, what do I believe and see myself as? And what is my relationship with that divine wisdom, with that power? Because the power is, it's that impersonal piece of God. It exists, has existed forever. If you and I are not plugged into it, it's not personal. It just passes us by. And then finally, lesson 3 was thinking, because thinking is the way we begin to connect. Right? It's how we connect with this absolute and begin to allow it to flow through and become part of what we do and what lives within us. Lesson 4 last week was denials. Right? This is the piece that's most missing in most people that I work with. And we talked about it. You cannot take new spirit, new wine, put it in the old container, it bursts onto the floor. We have to do the work to clean it. The other example we used is the sponge, right? It can be completely filled with old dirty dishwater. Take it over to the pristine ocean. It cannot receive one drop. That's our work to do. Affirmations, the other thing I call those, are truth statements. As you make a truth statement that aligns you with the divine that flows through you, that's how we begin to change our consciousness through our thinking. That's how we connect with this absolute impersonal creative life force and allow it to then become flowing through us to become a creative life force. And she says over and over again, it's your responsibility, it's my responsibility to do that work. It's the only way I know that works. And we like to miss these. And then finally, faith last week was, and we talked about it as a religious term. She used it completely different because faith is what provides the substance in the invisible to bring into our visible life. It's a different meaning to faith. It's a higher meaning to faith. And the way we get there is we do all the 5 blocks to get to that level 6. So as we move forward into 7, she tells us this. I'm going to use it every week we do this because it is not enough to be a hearer of the words. We have to do them. Eric Butterworth was a famous Unity minister in New York, used to say all the time, Unity does a whole lot of talking and not a lot of doing. And we see that around us. We see that in many different spiritual practices. A lot of talking, a lot of listening, but not a lot of doing. And the doing is where the magic happens. It's where the change comes. So lesson number 7, as I said, is the physical completion. And she calls this chapter personality and individuality. Personality, what is it? It comes from the word persona. It comes from the word of a mask. It's what we put out to the world when we feel unsafe and fearful. We build this persona. We build this personality. It's man and human and woman made. We create it. I mean, I could do a whole, I've got a book that's wonderful. It talks about the 9 different masks that we wear. It gets a little complex. I like to keep it more simple than that. But the fact is we all build a mask. And it goes the whole way back, probably from the very day we came out of the womb, when we began to feel unsafe for the first time in 9 months. And when we look at that, it's how we present ourselves to the world. Not how we feel inside. It's what we present. It's that mask, persona, personality. Other people call it the little self. Other people call it the ego. All words meaning the very same thing. It's human-made. Individuality is divine-made. You and I each are an individual expression of God, of the divine. And so she's making this discernment today is between what we have made humanly and how we are made inside of the divine. And yes, everyone has both. We see some people who have learned to live more from their individuality side. They are the great teachers, the great spiritual teachers. And even Jesus, which people held up, and we talked about that last week, he never ever said worship me. He never held himself up as an exception. He said, follow my example and you'll get there too. Actually, he was even stronger than that. He said, you'll do better than I do. That's a big statement, isn't it? And I don't believe he said that unless he believed it and meant it for you and me. But it's in this distinction of understanding these two that we began to make some difference. As you know, I love Emerson. And when I saw this quote this week, I had to put it in there, even though it didn't quite fit totally. But he says, converse with a mind that is grandly simple, and all the literature books look like word catching. What he's saying here is don't make this complex out of your ego, out of your personality. That's why my mantra is KISS, keep it simple and spiritual. I'm not interested in the one who takes 400 pages to tell you one truth. I'm this kind of person. I like Emily Cady, because in 88 pages she could do 12 lessons. So look for the simple, look for what works, because if it doesn't work tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday, it's useless because you're listening to the Word and not doing. And that's what Emerson's saying here is look. So personality, we talked about this. It's a human part of you. Can be called the ego, can be called the little self. Individuality is the divine part of you, the real self, true self. I use the term completed soul, or the whole soul. All these mean the same. It's identifying that peace within you at our core that is nothing but perfection. You know, the Master Teacher Jesus says, be perfect as the Father in heaven is perfect. I struggled with that for years because I know I wasn't perfect. But there's a part of me that is perfect, and there's a part of you that is. And as we begin to know how to access that, that's when transformative change comes. And that's what she's talking about here in chapter 7. Remember, it's the summation of the first 6 chapters to what she's talking about here. Quick story in the Bible, when you remember John the Baptist, who led when Jesus was coming. John the Baptist represents metaphysically the best of the human intellect. He was the smartest and the brightest at the time. And he said this, he, being spirit or the divine or Jesus, must increase, and I must decrease. The intellectual, the personality, the humanness part of that must become less and less and less to allow the divine or the spirit to show up. For those of you who remember this story, what happened to John? How did he die? He had his head cut off. No coincidence that the story is about moving from human intellect, thinking all the time, doing all that analysis. That works fine in the business world, or works fine if you're teaching or whatever. But in your spiritual journey, everything that the Master Teacher teaches, and Emily Cady, is that you have to go beyond that human thinking, that rational mind. Because that's what built your personality. And if you don't move beyond that, you will stay stuck in that place of fear and smallness and never open up to the totality of the divine that's within you. So as we're doing in these lessons, we're going to look at a couple key points. Number one, personality, and I used ego or small self here, is the outer changeable person, the mask we put on to fit into our environment. I've already talked about that. But that's the mask we come in. It doesn't matter where you go. You go into the bank, you go into work, you come home, you come here. If we're not careful, we wear a mask. It's the mask of personality. It's how I show up at Unity to be whatever. It's how I show up at home with my spouse. It's external. It's outside. But as our individuality, our higher self, our Christ self, the I am, and again I use my completed or whole soul, same words, mean the same, it's that divine within, is the undivided self of God in you and me, eternal, unchanging. It's absolute. It never, ever changes. Forever. Past and future. It's that peace within you where we get to and we access that we can just breathe into and say, I'm home. And it's all good. No matter what's going on around us in the human part. Number three, a personality may be fearful, fighting its way through obstacles. Individuality never battles, is never puffed up with pride. It's the humbleness, the meekness that the Master Teacher Jesus talked about. He never said be a doormat, but he said humble yourself to the ego, to the personality, so that you can be connected with the individuality. Remember, the teaching is you cannot serve two masters. We have to choose. Which one today are we going to bring forth through our life experience? Because the only person who can do that for you is you. and for me is me. Number 4, to avoid being overcome by someone else's personality, always remember that personality is only human, while individuality is divine. Can God fear anyone? So if you feel fear and anxiety coming up for you, you are not connected with this that we're talking about. You are not connected with your individuality. You're living in your personality. And it goes the same with the past stuff, right? Any blame and shame and guilt is not in this place of where you are that individual expression of all that God is. He said, it's the Father's greatest pleasure to give you it all. That's who we really are. That's who we truly are. And as we connect with that, we begin to live from that place of abundance and not lack and limitation. And if we're in lack and limitation, we are not there. We're living in this personality or the mask. And number 5, we build our own individuality as we love, honor, serve Spirit, as individuality in ourselves and others. It goes back to what's taught. It's better to give, right, than to receive. And it's in that giving of, from that place of complete fullness and abundance, that we can share with everyone else. You know, so many times religion has taught that you need to go out and serve others. And that can just burn you out. If you're serving from, I need to do this, or I ought to do that, that's serving from personality. If I go do this, or I give this much money, it puffs up my ego. That is not what this is about. This is about being so full of yourself from the abundance from the divine within you that you cannot help, because the cup is overflowing, right? We don't want to be as cup half empty, cup half full. We want to be cup overflowing. And it's that flow coming through you and I that allows us to serve others. In time, I love this piece, in time everyone will realize who they really are. And they're not a personality, but their individuality. With all the wisdom, all the love, all the power of Spirit manifesting through each and every one. Folks, we're all going to get there. Every one of us is going to get to this place that she's talking about. That takes a lot of pressure off. It's like, oh my, I'm left behind, or it's too late, or I didn't do this. And that's when we begin to should on ourselves. I should have done that and this and that. No, it's all perfect part of the process you're in. And we're in a process moving from personality to individual. It takes a lot of pressure off. Here's another way to look at it. Personality is putting our I in self-image or ego. And this process I call self-awareness. We become aware of where we place ourselves. Are we placing ourselves in this personality? And is that how we're going out today to the world? Or are we going to place our I in individuality or our completed or whole soul? That's what we do all day long. Most of it subconsciously, unaware. Because we're running out of habitual patterns that we've been doing. When someone does this or doesn't do that, we react. That's all habitual patterns out of subconscious. That is working and putting our I in personality. Not coming from a place connected totally with the divine. All human suffering comes from misplacing our I. If you go back through your history and look at where you suffered the most, you're going to find that your I was in your ego, your I was in your little self, your I was in your personality. It wasn't coming from soul. It wasn't coming from the divine. No condemnation, no judgment of that. We simply make a change. And say, I'm going to become more aware. I'm going to begin to come from that place of individuality, that place of completion that is within me. Now, Jesus said this, you must be born anew. This is the concept being born again. And what I understand now in this process, because he talks later about being born of water and being born of spirit. Being born of water is being born of the physical. It's being born of personality. Being born of spirit is being born in individuality. And he says you cannot transform. Actually, he says later, you cannot even enter the kingdom unless you know how to do this. And do this is moving from personality to living from individuality. And on Tuesday night, we're going to actually work on this. I'm going to share with you the process that I use. You can try it on and see if it works for you. But the number one most important piece out of the lessons in truth teaching is in this chapter, I believe. Because if you cannot go to the place where you can consciously go to individuality instantly, you cannot begin to make the transformation that happens in your life. You will keep running out of the patterns, the habitual patterns coming out of subconscious. So this chapter to me is paramount before we move on to the next 5 that takes us to the spiritual summary of the spiritual summit of these lessons. Lesson number 8, spiritual understanding. So important. It comes when we're connected to the individuality within us. This you cannot work out in your rational human mind. It doesn't work. It flows through you, and we're going to see. And it flows through you through something called intuition. Intuition means of spirit. And as we learn to connect with that, and you can do this at any time of the day, stop, take a breath, and ask for spiritual understanding. And most of us, if you're like me, we're going to charge ahead and make it happen. Take a breath, ask, and listen. And spiritual understanding begins to flow from the very center of us. It says, blessed is those who go after wisdom and understanding. It's more valuable than any jewels. Solomon, the wisest man, the richest man ever in the earth, said this: not only do you want to get wisdom, but the most important is understanding. And what he's talking about here is spiritual understanding. The connection to the divine, to the Father, Mother, God, that's within you will never, ever make a mistake. It's all wisdom. It's all knowledge. You have that within you. Why in the world do I use this brain? Because it's limited. It's finite. It can only know so much. It can only memorize so much. But I have access to it all. And so do you. As we learn how to connect through this whole process of moving out of personality into individuality, one of the blessings, one of the promises, that all the understanding of the universe is yours to have. Why would we keep doing this? I don't know. We forget it. Key points of lesson number 8. Number 1, all the teachings of Jesus were designed to lead us for one thing, and that was into the awareness of the oneness with the Father within. Everything he taught, 2,643 red words, were about one thing, and that's showing you and I an example, a teaching. And when you begin to read the New Testament from, how is this going to show me how better to get to oneness with the divine within me, your understanding of the Bible will soar. Because we have gotten caught up in all these literal and translations and historical. It doesn't matter. What matters, are you picking the example to show you how to get closer to oneness with perfection. That's what all the teachings are about. When you find a oneness with the Father down deep in the depths of your being, when you know within yourself that the fountain of all joy, wisdom, and health is within your own being, simply waiting for you. He taught it this way: I stand at the door and knock, and you do not answer. I cannot come in. Why not? Because I would override your free will. You have choice. You have choice. We've been created with the choice to make decisions and the free will to choose to have this or have it not. But stand, I've been knocking for centuries, for eons. Open the door. That's all we have to do. And we're connected to this perfection. that has all of joy, wisdom, and health. And here's what I'm going to say, quick sidebar. If you find you're weak this week, and you're missing joy, and you're missing wisdom, and you're missing health, you're not connected. He's telling you exactly what to do. I'm waiting with all of it. Open up. Secret about this door. It only opens in. You can't open it from the outside. You and I have to open it. And how do we open it? We open it with focus. We open it with our thinking. We open it with our consciousness. I want that now. A great teacher in China was asked by one of his devotees. He said, I just don't feel like I'm getting connected. I don't have, the desire to do this and make it happen. And he grabbed a hold of him and stuck his head in the water, under the water, and held him down till he almost drowned. And he came back up and he was gasping for air, and he goes, when you want this as bad as you want oxygen, you will connect with the divine. We have to create the desire in us. It's not hard work. It's consistent work with a desire to get there and make this transformation change in our lives. Spiritual understanding is transformation, a revelation of God's wisdom within your very own heart. It is not coming from the mind, it's coming through you. It's coming through intuition, connected with divine wisdom coming into you. And then you get to say yea or nay. But it doesn't come into you if you don't open the door and say, I want that. It passes you right by. And for many, many years of my life, and I searched all over the world and every religion I could find, I didn't open the door. And it just, I read lots of books. I got thousands of them. But I was a listener to the Word. I was a reader of the Word. I wasn't doing the Word. And doing the Word has opened the door to getting connected. There's no other way that I know. To all of God's wisdom within you. The first step is to turn our thoughts away from the external appearances and go inward to true reality. Jesus said it this way, do not judge the appearances, right? But judge righteously, judge with the right thought. Do I know where to go to get the wisdom? That's the right thought. That's what makes it you righteous in that process. The right thought to connect with the individuality within me, and I'm not going to get connected with all the stuff that's going out in ego and personality realm. I'll give it any more energy. What happens when you withdraw your energy? It falls into the nothingness which it is. One power. Right? We saw early. Who else could you fear? God fears no one, so neither should you all. And we won't when we're connected with Source. Number 5, there are times you feel almost overcome with doubts and questions. Anybody here ever have doubts? Or just me? Yeah, we all do. It's okay, it's part of the process. But listen to what Emily Cady says. But you must continue through this valley of the shadow. What do most of us do? I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not rich enough. I haven't been in unity enough. None of it has anything to do with anything. All you and I got to do is keep doing it. Getting connected. Saying, she gives us great denial. There is no doubt. Go right there. And then begin to the truth statement. What are you is, I am connected with it all. The wisdom of the universe is flowing through me. What do? We say, well, you know what? I'm having trouble or I'm struggling. What happens then? We get more trouble. We get more struggle. She's saying, no, stop. Take a deep breath. Keep going. Keep doing what you're doing because you're going to get to the other side. And she says at the very bottom here, it's all part of the process. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. What we have to do is just keep doing what we've been taught to do in the process. And we will go through that valley of shadow. And what's on the other side of the valley of shadow is sunlight and then a mountaintop. Right? very practical teachings here of what we need to do to go through. One day, I love this one. In the fullness of God's time. I don't like that part. I like it in Dan's time. Now. Doesn't work that way. Remember we had the teaching a couple of weeks ago, when you put the seed in the ground, then it comes up, and then there's some leaves, and finally you get an ear, you get harvest. There's a time this stuff takes time within you to work. And what he's saying, in God's time, while you are using these words of truth, they'll become the living word made flesh in you. The power will come through the words. This is spiritual understanding. It's the power that's different than intellectual thought. And if we're not getting connected with spiritual power, then we are not in spiritual understanding. It's the power that comes through that makes the transformation, not only in our minds, our bodies, but in our life affairs as we go forward. Don't you ever forget, you're the temple of the whole Spirit of God. The whole Spirit of God lies within you. You are that temple, not this building. It doesn't happen till you come. Because you're carrying the whole Spirit, the Holy Spirit, which means whole, into this building. And that's when I said in the beginning, that's what connects. That's how we commingle the energy and we raise the consciousness of this community. Finally, number 9 this week is the secret place of the Most High. This is Psalms 91. It's one of my favorite psalms. We're to dwell here. What does dwell mean? It means to live. Can we actually live here? Yep. We can choose not to live there. It's choice. But let's look at what she says about it. Ask and you'll receive the joy, that your joy may be full. If you're not finding joy in life, you're not connected here with Source. Because when you're connected with Source, joy flows. The fullness of joy. And that's one of the quickest tests for me. Do I feel love? Do I feel peace? Do I feel joy? And if not, then there's something going on in me that I got to stop. Do the work to get reconnected. Right? These are quick tests for you. You wake up in the morning and all of a sudden you feel like crap. You don't even know why. Might be the dream you just had. There's the perfect time to get connected and be in the full joy. Don't go 1 second further. Stop. Change the way you approach it, and you're going to watch what starts to happen. The other thing the master teacher said, I need to leave so I can send the Comforter to live within you. If you're not feeling comforted, you're not connected to what we're talking about in individuality. You're still living in personality. But there's a comfort within each and every one of us. It's all, many times, example of the white dove. The problem with the white dove, it's external. This happens inside you. So, I mean, if you can visualize a white dove flowing down through you, okay. For me, it shows up as light. Bright light. That's the comforter to me, because it has to happen within you, not external. Key points of lesson 9. Deep in our hearts is a great and awful homesickness that has never been and can never be satisfied with anything less than a clear, vivid experience of the indwelling presence of our Father and Mother God. This is the dissatisfaction that every human being has. No matter how much money they have, no matter how big the house is, no matter how powerful they are in their job, there's a dissatisfaction. None of it brings the peace and the joy that it does when you're connected. Now, you can have all those things. That's not the issue. The issue is, do you have joy? Do you have... I mean, we see how many people who are so successful in whatever and they end up in suicide. That is not joy. That is not peace, and that's not love. So we can have all the material things, but not have this. This is what she's talking about. Deep in our hearts is this incredible homesickness. The same homesickness we saw in the prodigal son. He came to himself and realized he was separated from Source. Right? The secret place of the Most High, where we are free from all fear, trouble, is the point of mystical union between the human and spirit. If you're feeling fearful, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling worried, you are not here. You are not in the secret place of the Most High. Now, we have the teachings to how to get there. But know that don't accept those. Don't be willing to say, I'm going to keep it, well, that's just who I am. No. You don't have to continue settling for that. You can have it all. And the way to get it all, we now know we have a process to put in place to be able to do that. There comes a time for each of us when we must learn for ourselves that Spirit lives in us and the God within us is our life, our light, and all good. We have to learn that. We have to live it. It's the only way to become doers of the Word. You can't do it and me tell you about it, or anybody else tell you about it. You can't read it in a book. You can't say quotes. Someone else did it. You have to do this, and you've got to find a way to do it. And that's what I love about Emily Cady. For 125 years, her principles and her teachings and these lessons have worked. The only thing that hasn't worked is when people went away from them and stopped doing them, including myself. So we know how to do this now through this process. Now it's our job to stay connected and do that. Revelation never comes through the intellect. So important. It never ever comes through intellect. It comes through intuition of spirit to the intellect. And this is so important to get connected with because it starts to guide you. When you're just in your intellect, you've got a 50-50 chance. Hitting it or not hitting it. When you move into individuality and connected with divine wisdom, it's 100%. It never fails. Comes through intuition to the intellect. And then we can begin to think about it and move it into our life and our bodies. Number 5, when you've learned how to raise your own awareness and abandon yourself to infinite spirit and do so daily, you'll become very aware of light, love, and all good. Over and over and over, she's given that. It's not hard work. We have to do it consistently. That's why I say on Tuesday nights, just give me 5 minutes in the morning and 5 at night. If you can do that and get connected in this secret place of the Most High, you're going to watch transformation start to happen. First in your mind, then in your body, and in your life affairs. It happens every time. The only time it doesn't is when one of us human beings decide to do what? We get in a little bit of valley of shadow, doubt sets in, we give up. And we got to wait till something happens, and then we start it all over again. No, we don't have to do that. We have full control to become master of our destiny through this process. And we are meant to be masters of our destiny in this co-creation process with the divine. Dwelling in the secret place of the Most High. It's where you and I want to spend our days. It's where you and I want to learn how to do this so that we can do this while we work. We can do this while we're at home. It's a process. It works. We just have to work it. So we have God's fountain, I call that. I love this idea of fountain. We have a fountain within us that's emitting all this light. And we just have to get connected with the fountain. And if we don't, it goes beyond us. We miss it. So our daily practice, be aware. Where are you bringing from your I from within? Are you bringing it from your individuality, or are you bringing it from your personality? Are you bringing it from your ego, from your persona, from the mask? Or are you bringing it from completed and whole soul that all of us have? One time a day, stop and think on some subject. Just get still. Instead of saying, well, I can figure this out, say, please give me the spiritual understanding. Ask for the understanding and then listen, and you're going to hear it. And finally, every day this week, once in the morning, once in the evening, experience the secret place. Ask, believe that it's there for you, and you'll receive. Ask. Take me to the secret place. and be quiet. And begin to experience it. And then when your ego comes back and says, well, did you do that right? Then that's when you're not too nice to your ego. Kick them to the curb. Right? Ask. Believe that it's happening for you. And it will. The secret place of the Almighty. Let's go to stillness. Just take a real deep cleansing breath. And in the exhale, let yourself exhale your persona, your personality, your mask. Be willing to stand naked without it. And welcome in your individuality, the connection with the divine, deep inside of your very being. One of the ways that I've found it helps is when I slightly look up with my closed eyes. Connects with the divine light. Let the light flow through your mind. No words needed. Just feel it. Feel the peace, feel the joy, and the love. You are loved. From the Creator of the universe loves you unconditionally. Feel that in your heart. Let the light and the love just open you up. This is who you were created to be. All that other stuff we just piled on top. Because we were afraid. We were scared. We thought we weren't enough, and we are. We thought we were somewhat of the not enough of whatever. It doesn't matter. We are. You and I were made in the likeness and the image of the Almighty. And here's where it lies, in the very center of you. Breathe that in. Breathe in the light, breathe in the love, and then let it flow down into your belly. And feel joy, the fullness of joy. You cannot feel joy and not have a smile on your face. I'm sorry. Frowns don't work with joy. But then either that or you have to teach your face to know it's joy. Feel the joy. Feel the peace. Feel the love. This is who you are. So it is.